Well, here we go. Cognitive gaming platforms. Think, think, think. So let's go deep into this for a little while and start out with some introductions. Amy, why don't you start?
Sure. Hi, I'm Amy Kruse. I'm a vice president at Intific. My background is neuroscience. I have a PhD in neuroscience. Prior to joining Intific about 4 years ago, I was a program manager at DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. At the company, we actually have a wide variety of technologies that we've been looking at and using and developing. The history of the company is certainly in modeling and simulation and gaming. And when I joined 4 years ago, I actually started up our neuroscience and education division, which is a lot of what we have at the booth today. So enabling technologies, software, and specific developments that we've made in that regard.
Hi, Joe Hardy, Vice President of Research and Development at Lumosity. My background also is in neuroscience. I'm actually a cognitive psychologist by training, and I've been leading the research and development team at Lumosity for 5 years. We do a lot of research into the efficacy of cognitive training for different outcomes, specifically enhancing cognitive abilities. And so I work with a large team of researchers from all around the world at universities who partner with us to test their specific questions in their specific populations. We also do a lot of research, web-based research and mobile-based research in terms of both in the validation research of figuring out what works and doesn't work with cognitive training, as well as some more big data kind of analyses that relate to healthy lifestyles and optimizing brain health through all kinds of different behaviors that you might do on an everyday basis.
I'm James Thompson. I'm the Chief Science Officer of Evoke Neuroscience. And Evoke is a medical grade technology biofeedback devices providing measurement of the electrophysiology of both the central and autonomic nervous systems, providing data analysis and interpretation solutions, and then providing the biofeedback technology that allows remediation of ailments, of cognitive disorders. Evoke's goal was to take complex technologies and be able to put this in the hands of more people and give them the opportunity to understand how their body works at a functional level and do something about it. So simplification of complex technology, allowing people to take control of their health.
My name is Reidar Wasenius. Greetings from Finland. We have quite a strongly growing games industry in Finland. Rovio with Angry Birds, Supercell with Clash of Clans, etc. We also have a top-notch healthcare system and an internationally renowned educational system. So what we've really been seeing the past few years is how these three pretty advanced areas are coming together, which make me personally very happy. I myself am approaching this mainly from a computational IT information background. I studied at the Helsinki University of Technology, now part of the Aalto University. But already in the early 90s, I realized that the kind of IT and artificial intelligence stuff that I was studying really needed to give way to real intelligence. So I started delivering brain training seminars, first on a hobby basis at a local community college in the late 80s, actually. And at that stage, people were like, what is brain training? Is there such a thing? So I realized at that stage that it really couldn't be a business, so I kept pursuing it for more than 20 years as a hobby. I've been working at Digital Equipment Corporation, Nokia twice. I'm from Finland, you know, so you need to work there at least once or twice. And then I also, I was the head of the Samsung Electronics Corporation office in Helsinki, Finland. And then gradually I realized I was hearing news from the United States that there is such a thing as brain training, and I was, yes, finally. So I quit Samsung, and at the farewell coffee, people were asking me, so what is this cool place you're going to? We're soon surpassing Nokia in mobile phones, and we're #1 in TVs and all that. I'm going to be a personal brainer, and I'm going to start the world's first brain fitness center. And people are like, okay, very good. A few years on, I have to say I'm very happy that I did that. I'm super happy to be here because we're now helping an increasing number of people working at companies to feel well, do well, cope with their everyday lives. That's our angle mainly currently. Thank you.
So at the center of your ability to gain market traction with consumers and individuals is the concept of engagement. And I'd be interested to hear from each one of you, how you're going about, engaging your users in new ways and what you're finding effective and not effective. Joe, why don't you start?
Sure. In terms of engagement is a key component of brain training from multiple different perspectives. For one, if you're not engaged in the task that you're doing, then you're not going to be turning on those systems that in the brain that essentially unlock the gates of neuroplasticity. So things like acetylcholine release, dopamine release in response to reward, norepinephrine in response to positive surprise. These sorts of neural processes that are associated with brain plasticity are driven by what we call engagement. So if you're not paying attention, if you're not focused, and if you're not rewarded for what you're doing, then the brain is not really going to be changing in response to the stimuli that it's engaged with. So at the most basic scientific level, engagement is super important. Obviously, from a business perspective, if people aren't playing, then you're not, your business isn't going anywhere. And then also, people need to train over time to gain benefits. So it's like going to the gym. If you don't do it, if you just have the subscription but you don't actually use it, you're not getting any benefit from it either. So engagement is core to everything that we do. We make games, and the games are fully integrated with the training. There's no distinction, but we make a strong effort to very closely tie the cognitive training components, the active ingredients, to the game in a way that is not tacked on, but is integral to the experience. In addition to that, we have other components of engagement, like your performance index and how that changes over time, and so a general measure of sort of how you're doing across the experience, and other sort of metagame elements. We think a lot about that, and we focus a lot of energy on that because we understand that you're not going to get benefit if you don't train, and if it's not engaging, it's not going to be beneficial. So we think a lot about that stuff.
Sure. I was just going to add, from our perspective, one of the things that we've seen, and I think this is something probably that we'll get to across the panel, is just the importance of having that diversity of team members as you're thinking about how to come up with cognitive gaming experiences. So the neuroscientists are important, the cognitive scientists are important, but my game designers and my creative types are equally important to us as part of that. And so when I think of engagement, I actually think of some of the things that are very important to my designers, like the importance of narrative in a game experience, and the ability of narrative to actually draw you into an experience and have you kind of interact with maybe some cognitive tasks that might, I'm not the first person to wake up in the morning and want to do an NBAC task. I don't know, call me crazy, but when I'm in a narrative and when I'm pulled into a story, that's actually something that I find, all of a sudden I'm doing something that I wasn't necessarily sort of drawn in to do maybe first thing in the morning. And so those, I think, are some really important things that we've been dealing with, the idea of story and narrative and how to build coherent, cohesive games that actually can have a long engagement period and actually bring people back to the game, because as we know, the repeated experience is really what sort of draws people to that and actually has the long-term impact and benefit. So I would just want to throw out a vote for narrative and story in our cognitive gaming.
So I'll add to this, and I think there are two real keys to driving engagement and keeping people engaged in what they're doing and the learning process. One of those being demonstrating the benefits of it. If you're not seeing change and not, this isn't translating into something that you see in your daily life, then you're not likely to continue to do it. And now that we can measure the brain directly in real time, we can start to demonstrate to someone, whether they're feeling different or not, we can demonstrate to them that real change is occurring, and if you continue along this path and using these tools, that you are going to show a marked improvement in your underlying brain and health. So I think that's a very important part. The other aspect is creating this optimum challenge level. So if things are too easy, then you're not going to continue to do it. If it's too difficult, you give up. And something like Angry Birds was a huge success. And they fit this difficulty level that came into this optimized place where people were successful enough, but the game was challenging enough that they felt that they had overcome some sort of adversity. And not myself, I quit the game because I couldn't get past the first stake, and obviously I'm a quitter and extremely uncoordinated. But for most people, they could have enough success at a difficult task that it kept them engaged. And by meeting that challenge level, we can keep people engaged in things that do benefit them, and they can take control.
But we've clearly seen at BRIIM, when we go to help clients and when they come to our BRIIM center, the social aspects are really the #1 thing. If you want to really develop yourself physically with fitness training, it's a very good idea to sign up for a regular class. Once or twice a week, you jump around in your tights, and it works both like a stick and a carrot, really. I mean, if you don't go there one Tuesday evening, the next time you come, people will be looking at you. Where were you the last time? So there is pressure, in a slightly negative way, you might say, a stick. Let's call it a stick. But there's also the carrot of these really nice, well-formed people. And the instructor is yummy, and I don't want to dance around alone in the kitchen to Jane Fonda anymore with my VHS or this thing I bought late night. I want to be surrounded by like-minded people, and suddenly, hey, I don't look so stupid. So what we found from day one really is that this social aspect is clear, at least for Finns. I have to say, so far, this is limited to grumpy people up in the north, but I suspect it's the same here, that you really need to get people going with exactly the same kind of incentives, both the carrot and the stick that's prevalent in physical fitness. And I have to say the narrative part is obviously very important as well. What are you really doing here? So when we're developing our various services and exercises and applications, also digital ones now, what am I doing? What am I going into? So I've been very excited to walk around the expo area to see the kind of games which are there, where professionals are really thinking about the storylines, the graphics, the environments. Those are the kind of tools that we want to be using. We won't be developing those, so I'm very glad to see that there are several companies right now here that we really eagerly look forward to collaborating with.
Well, and at BRIIM, you've really taken it to the next level, right? You're integrating physical fitness with mental fitness at the same time, right? People are running around touching different technologies.
That's one of the exercises we have where something as simple as a blinking lamp will help you, coupled with sounds, and you disperse them around. So a senior citizen might just be sitting around a table and do exercises, but if you want to get a physical workout, you increase the distance, and then you get much more. So the benefits that James was discussing here as well are, of course, more clear. So you get more for the buck. But even there, the social aspect, clearly, that we see in our platform, in the BRIIM Spark platform that we're building, people need to be able to create their own exercises. I'm not seeing that in the industry yet, but I suspect we'll see quite a lot of that come next Neurogaming Expo, where people are really creating a lot of their own exercising, challenging each other. I did this in 3 minutes flat. Can you do this? Or 500 points or whatever. And that's going to make our industry really boom. That I promise you that.
Well, that's a nice segue into sort of the next place I want to take you is we know where we're at right now. Where are we going? What's going to be interesting or fashionable in the next 5 years that's going to help make the cognitive neurogaming market spark?
Well, I'll start out here. I think that one of the most important things is what's now occurring is that this is now becoming mobile. You're not tethered to your desk. You're not having to go to the doctor's office in order to perform biofeedback and in order to get these benefits. You can literally have this on your phone. And as we move forward, what's occurring with the combination of wearables being portable and then portable technology and everything going on to phones that are with you all the time, it is allowing you to now measure and understand yourself and be on the road. And unfortunately, what has occurred is there was a big spike in buying these wearables. People use them for a little bit, but the research demonstrates clearly that the longer someone owns one of these devices, the less they use it. And it draws right back into the engagement factor. But what is going to change is that these are going to be more simple and more portable. And as was mentioned yesterday, when we get it to a point where someone doesn't realize that they're using the technology, but it is affecting their life, that's where we're going to be able to get to, and that's going to make this very useful for everybody.
Amy?
Well, so I think from my perspective, leaning all the way far forward is really the ability of the individual to sort of change their own brain or change their own outcomes. And I think, as we've seen the development of the wearables with the quantified self, and I often think about, the conversation that I just listened to about privacy and information about oneself. And why do you share information about yourself? You share information about yourself to those services and devices because they add value to your life. And I think we're going to start to see the value proposition change in this cognitive space in a really sort of revolutionary way. And right now it's sort of at this infancy state. We're able to do the things that we know how to do, right? We have cognitive tasks and we have data from the literature and we have all of this sort of foundational work that's under us, and we're sort of building on that now. But what's that next leaping off point? We've talked a lot about individual experiences and individual games, but we haven't talked about when neuro meets social meets gaming meets, sort of the massively multiplayer aspects of that. So I actually think, combining a couple of the different pieces that we've heard at the conference here, putting those all together into a new sort of neuro-social self sort of experiences where I actually see things going, I think we'll break beyond the individual piece and actually start to move out a bit. And so that's very exciting.
Joe is nodding his head vociferously.
Yeah, no, that was.
I didn't lead that on purpose.
No, that was great. I actually, both of those points I was going to say, but the two things I was going to mention were personalization and integration. And I think, on the personalization level, I mean, all of the data, to your point in terms of the neuroscience literature, all of that analysis is done on the aggregate level, group level. There's a lot of individual differences and variability in people's responses to all of these different technologies and different types of training and physical exercise and all of these things. And we're only now, I mean, to now, we've just really thought about that variability as noise. It's a challenge, it's a problem in designing your study. It's not an opportunity. I think in the next 5 years, we're moving beyond that. We're getting into that place where each individual can start to personalize the experience of what optimizes their cognition, what optimizes their ability to think on a daily basis. What times of day are they best? What foods support their best performance? What physical exercise, what cognitive exercises, and at what times and what moments in their life and their daily experiences are optimal for them to get their peak performance. And in doing that is going to be integration of different technologies. I mean, right now, things are still very much sharded off into different pieces. So, the Fitbits of the world have their exercise data, and, we have the cognitive data. And, in the future, this stuff is going to come together, and we're going to understand the interactions better, not just at an aggregate group level, but at a personal level.
Besides the kind of social braining that I was talking about, I have to say that I believe within the next few years we'll clearly see that people will really demand and crave for the kind of brain training which is equal to learning cognitive skills they need, and clearly where they see a difference happening in their daily lives. The day and age of any kind of services or applications where you're sort of isolated from reality and you're just getting more points in a particular game because you're better at that game, that doesn't cut it anymore. If anyone is considering to enter into the market at this stage with anything like that, it's doomed to fail. And we're clearly seeing very rapidly among the users that we also already have is that they're not, and Amy and James, I have to say, we're touching on this as well, that something tangible needs to happen in their daily lives. I'm more skillful at remembering people's names. It's a skill. I'm better at being focused. I'm better at making decisions. So the kind of cognitive skills that someone claims are being given need to be translated into daily lives. So Sudoku, forget about it. It's like you're a decathlon. If life is like decathlon, then doing Sudoku, what is that? Like strengthening your pinky. You're not even better at bookkeeping if you're good at Sudoku. It doesn't translate. So it's like if an old lady says, wow, Sudoku is so good for me. Well, then I feel sorry for you. It's like going with the roller. If she's equally proud for walking with the roller to the kitchen herself one day, it's good for her, but then she's in really poor shape. For ordinary people here, it doesn't give you any benefits. It doesn't translate. So this is going to change rapidly during the next 3 years. After 5 years, as you were asking, we will have only mostly good stuff, at least the ones who don't won't get paid.
So yeah, I just had one follow-up, and it was actually sort of a thought that I had earlier this morning, and then was sparked by what Joe had said, which was, I think we're also going to have a variety, again, leaning far forward, I think we're going to have a variety of interventions to individuals that we don't have right now. So I've done some cognitive tasks, or I've got an assessment of, how I'm feeling today, or what my mood is, or, right now we maybe have a cup of coffee, maybe we go for a walk. What if brain stimulation, devices are actually accessible to us, and I've sort of made an assessment of where I'm at in the morning. Maybe I've done a little cognitive exercise and I need a little boost. Maybe I'm administering something like that to myself. Maybe we have something in the, more, I don't want to call it, neuropharma space, but not necessarily the drug space, but a neuroceutical space that actually has an intervention. And so I think as we, again, build up this foundation of data about our individual performance, what then are my levers to sort of, impact my performance? And I think interventions are actually going to be an explosive space looking forward in the next 5 years.
Right, and I think where we want to take this is to sort of think about what does convergence mean in this space. And James, I mean, you've developed a closed-loop neurofeedback system. Tell us about it and where you think it can go.
Well, the closed-loop nature of this actually goes back to what we're talking about here. Is there's often a disconnect between the measurement or the understanding that there's something that I should improve about myself, and then the what do I do about it, which is how do I go about improving myself or improving my health or remediating some sort of disease or disorder. And without the connection between the measurement and being told something's wrong with you and the ability to actually do something about it, I actually don't need to know that I have a problem unless you can tell me or provide me a way to do something about this. And that interplay between the measurement, the data interpretation, and then the actionable results is key to this. Having information but not being able to do anything with it isn't very beneficial to anyone. And that is a key factor here, and it gets back to, let's take the ability, more clicks, less bricks is an idea that we can run with these days, literally, because we can take the tools to make you healthier and better and take these out of the offices and the medical platforms and provide them to individuals in portable formats. So I think that's creating that closed loop nature. It also is essential that education is a part of this. And measuring something but not ever letting someone know why it matters to them, they're not going to be engaged, as we talked about earlier, in doing something about it. So this closed-loop nature of things, you can assess, you can train or rehabilitate, but the educational component has to be there as well, which is one of the challenges of any new set of technologies, is teaching people why it matters.
So, Joe, you've got 60 million users. What are you doing with the data?
That's a good question. Yeah, there's a tremendous opportunity with big data these days to learn things about the human brain at a much faster rate than we've ever been able to do before. Last year we presented a paper in Frontiers in Human Neuroscience that looked at a few different factors and their effect on cognition. In our database right now we have over 1.5 billion gameplays. So people have played these games literally billions of times, and each time they play a game, it's a measurement as well. So we can understand at that moment how that person is performing on that task. And if you integrate that over many people and many locations and many times, many circumstances, you can learn a lot. So one of the things that we were interested in is looking at, say, your performance as a function of your diet, your sleep, your exercise, things like that. So we looked at, asked people about how much they slept. And what we found was, unsurprisingly, that people who slept a moderate amount performed better, and with a peak at around 7 hours. The 7 hours peak was actually kind of surprising. I thought it was going to be 8, but it was very, very definitely not. It was definitely 7, and you could see a steep drop off in both directions. But to the point of, going forward 5 years, okay, it's great that the average person performs best with 7 hours of sleep, but how much does that help me? So the next step is taking that to the next level for you, for your chronotype, for the person, whether you're a morning person or an evening person, whether you need a lot of sleep or a little bit of sleep, optimizing that for you and feeding that back to you as an individual is sort of like, I think that's the next level for this.
Do you think that'll start to converge with some of the genomics and proteomics data that people are starting to collect? I mean, do you see those two things as converging with your big data?
Yeah, I would hope that it does. I would hope that it does. One thing that you could imagine is, understanding the genetic drivers of optimal performance, and then also personalization as well. Personalizing your experience based on your genetics. That's really to be there. Maybe it's 5+ years.
Sure,
but yeah,
sure. But I was thinking about that from the sleep perspective, right? Because there is data from the from the genomics literature showing short sleepers, long sleepers. It's obviously something that has some genetic variability, and it sort of made me think of converging that with some of the cognitive data.
If we take this back to the engagement and the optimized challenge level, which is going to keep someone coming back for more. What the opportunity is here and that we're talking about is personalizing the experience such that if I am measured and I only had X amount of sleep the night before, the game knows to modify the challenge level such a way that I get optimized success in the game that day, therefore creating more benefits and keeping me coming back because I have had some success in a difficult task. That success breeds confidence, and that confidence will further breed the success that keeps me coming back to this. So allowing for physiology measurements and having the system automatically know how you are doing or where you are starting that day and modifying the game automatically to that could be a very important part of creating the technologies.
Getting back to what I said when I was introducing myself and actually referring to Amy as well, I have to say that at least in our case, and when you look at Finland and some other European countries, what you clearly see there is a convergence of businesses, of industries and skill sets, which is, of course, absolutely crucial for creating anything which could in any way be called new. So you combine things that weren't combined before. In our case, of course, we have this internationally renowned educational system in Finland. We have a really well-working healthcare system. And then we have this young industry of gamers and gaming. So what we're clearly seeing how in this community of entrepreneurs in Finland and Sweden and Norway, the Baltics in particular, People are coming together and forming very hot startups, I have to say. I'm not talking about ours in this sense as being necessarily even the hottest one at all by any means. But when you look at what's really creating success for any of these companies, it's because they have a team of people who know about these different important areas. They have the advisors, etc. Not only are you creating something good, of course, with the expertise, but it's genuinely new. I mean, we look at neurogaming in any way, helping people to evolve. Seriously, you need quite a broad spectrum of expertise on a board. And to me, that's the sexiest, the hottest kind of convergence, really creating something new.
So let's continue to push this. I want to push you guys. What do you think of TDCS, transcranial direct current stimulation, and integrating that into some of these cognitive fitness platforms? What do you think about transcranial alternating current stimulation? What do you think about those combined as a closed loop feedback system to stimulate and improve memory and attention?
There's a huge role for that as it becomes, the efficacy is demonstrated. The safety obviously has to be on board. If you're going to be doing this at home, there have to be parameters and limits to how much you can zap your brain, because I have actually seen this. My partner's a bit of a mad scientist, and so he lets his kids play with a lot of our toys, which are medical devices. And we got a call one day, and his daughter had overdone it. And it was unfortunate, but we did some brain mapping, and rest assured she was fine. But so where am I going with this? The point is that TDCS and stimulations do necessarily cause change, and that can be very beneficial in jump-starting a system that needs a little help getting going. And once that system is going through the stimulation techniques, you can then reinforce that through learning paradigms, classical and operant conditioning, such that the person then reinforces these on their own and can build that brain muscle, personal braining, as is coined up here. And what the stimulation allows is a more effective training session to occur following the stimulation. So you apply neurofeedback and biofeedback following stimulation. The person then reinforces the pathways that were jump-started, and you introduce gaming that keeps them doing this and making it fun, and can introduce the right levels of challenges that are appropriate for that person, whether it's working memory or agility, whatever it might be. So the stimulation has a very important role to play. And as the technology improves, that is going to, I believe, be a huge part of cognitive enhancement.
Amy, you were the program leader at DARPA for the Augmented Cognition Program. How has that sort of filtered into what you're doing in Intific?
Oh, it's been great. So one of the things that we found through the Augmented Cognition programs and the other neuroscience programs that I ran at DARPA was actually that the software space was untapped, was really unexplored. There were a lot of hardware options. There were a lot of physiological measurement options. There were a lot of great questions to ask, but the space of software was really the place that we needed to actually go to start opening up those questions. And so we coined a phrase called operational neuroscience or applied neuroscience, and really started to recreate some of those engaging, operationally relevant environments to start looking at the questions of neuroscience in those particular contexts. And I think that's been one of the things that we've tried to do quite a bit at Intific, is actually create very immersive, very engaging experiences for both researchers and developers to start looking at these deeper questions. We all stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us who did very basic cognitive neuroscience and very basic research, and as both the commercial world and the military world becomes more interested in how do I really use these tools, we actually need places to experience and play and sort of move things around, because you're not just going to build one simulation and that's the answer. You have to be able to iterate on it, and software allows you that space to do that, and that's been where I think we've seen particular success in our sort of desktop systems and web-hosted systems. So.
Right, but you were involved in funding some of the early TDCS experiments.
Yes, I was.
And so, and you're working now in sort of massive parallel training programs.
Yep.
Do you see these technologies again converging and being used?
Yes, absolutely. So it's finally come. You know, I hate to count years, but it's sort of been, we've sort of been working on this for a little over a decade now from the very first start of when I think the DoD started to get interested in it and to the application space. And we're actually starting to see great applications and solicitations come out to start to integrate some of these technologies into the military training systems. It has been an issue because actually it tends to be stovepiped. Which is not probably terribly surprising from a government perspective, but you know, it's sort of like, where does the cognitive piece belong? Is it medical? Is it behavioral? Is it, you know, a lot of times the services themselves have struggled with where to sort of place these technologies, but we've seen enormous interest in particularly, well, actually all across the services actually to start integrating those technologies. So I think we're actually going to start seeing those integrated into some of the work that we did in marksmanship. So improving marksmanship training is one area in particular. Obviously, all of the attention and cognitive workload efforts that we had in augmented cognition and pulling those forward, so accelerated learning technologies. Big pull for those now, but actually they want it in the gaming context. So I think that's actually going to be where we're going to see a lot of the investment and advancements.
James, so how do you take a clinical technology and make it fun for the consumer?
Well, that's a huge challenge.
Yeah.
So
the $64,000 question, right?
Right. So I'm not going to reveal my secret to everybody here. So.
No.
The
key, we have some TDCS. We can get it out of you.
That's right. Zap me into spilling the beans. So one of the keys in taking medical technologies and making it for the consumer is education and getting people to understand. I mean, when I again talking in years or decades, 15 years ago or so, when I was earlier on in this field, people did not understand that you could measure the brain and that you could literally train it like a muscle and induce cognitive change and benefits. Now we're at the point where people are believing this, and the American Academy of Pediatrics has biofeedback as a level 1 efficacious treatment for ADD and ADHD, which is fantastic. And so the education is very slow, but when it hits, people do adapt or adopt the technologies. So that's a key part. Then one of the other issues is, and this is pairing the technologies as we talked about earlier, is that I feel there's a real respect issue between medical and gaming. And gaming does not want to be seen as medical because it is so unsexy, the medical world, that it's just not fun to do. And the medical world has not yet recognized all the benefits that can be gleaned from introducing games and this type of technology in treating people. So I think that getting these two fields to respect each other and educating the consumers, because the consumers will drive that respect. They will demand that medicine becomes something that they can do and that they want to do. And that is the other challenge, is taking something that people only do because they have to do it and making it something that they do because they want to do it. And that is where this play, taking medical to making it consumer, is key. And you've got to make it something that's familiar to people. People are scared of things that they don't know, and gaming is familiar. And if we can take that and leverage that such that we are utilizing that in medical technologies, it's going to be a benefit for everyone.
Reidar, what's the brain fitness space like in Europe?
Well, as I was mentioning about the Nordics, Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and the Baltics next to that, and in Northern Europe and Germany, UK, France, we're clearly seeing now that people are accepting increasingly the thought. I mean, people in the street are accepting the thought that, yeah, brain training, there is such a thing, such a category in the scheme of things. That, yeah, the brain can be trained somehow. Then, of course, there are many, many different flavors of brain training. Like here, in some cases, you want to zap it, you want to just affect some areas of the brain with doing something in, like we're creating a toolbox where people learn cognitive skills. So you get more skillful, you get better at using your brain without any of that other stuff. And we're seeing other companies pursuing very different trajectories. And therefore, as another response to your question, I have to say that people are very confused. I mean, I guess I presume it's pretty much the same here. I mean, if you talk to your grandma or your aunt or uncle and you tell them you're in brain training or something, you use some other word similar to that, they have no idea what you're talking about. In some cases, they've heard something they saw on 60 Minutes or 2020 or whatever, and they saw one of those flavors of brain something. And then they ask, oh no, are you into that? I saw this James character, James, he's talking about this. Are you into that now? Or are you just playing games and getting better at games on the screen? How does that translate in your life? So in a pretty sarcastic way, when I'm going to different countries in Europe, I'm getting very large, a frighteningly wide spectrum of responses, typically skeptical, etc., of course, which is fine. I've been personal trainer for 20 years. You can't introduce yourself to people and take yourself too seriously. So I'm not sad or angry about that. But for our business, it really hurts. I mean, I'm talking about for all of us. There are so many different flavors. So some kind of I don't know, union or body or collaboration or terminology collaboration is urgently needed. If we all talk about brain training or waving your arms and not, eating processed food because they don't contain water, and that's brain training, it's really dangerous, really, really dangerous.
Joe, you're a global corporation. What are you seeing?
In terms of internationally?
Yeah,
or?
internationally, adoption, usage.
Sure. I mean,
change.
we recently launched our platform in Spanish, French, German, and Japanese. So it's pretty new for us. We do know that we have a lot of adoption and interest in areas where people speak English already on the English language program. So places like Canada and Australia especially. For whatever reason, Australia is like a hotbed for all things like neuro. I don't know why that is. But yeah, Australia is a big one. But there's a lot of interest in all these different places. Japan has a pretty robust industry already oriented around improving the brain and enhancing cognition. So who knows what's going to happen in China? Well, we certainly have a very nice ripoff of Lumosity available in China already. Who knows where that goes? But the next, we're expecting in the next year to have more than half of our business coming internationally. So I think that's where we're going.
They had Nicole Kidman on the couch. She's from Australia a few years ago. That's why they're big in Australia.
So what's holding us back? Why don't I use brain fitness every day? I mean, I'm in the middle of this space. I'm not using it. What's holding me back?
You should.
You don't need
it.
No.
I actually. So I thought about this, and I've been thinking about this for a while, and I think that one of the things that's holding us back, and I'm going to make a global statement, and there are going to be some individual cases where this does not apply. Obviously, Lumosity has a huge amount of data, but I actually think it's efficacy data and the ability to make claims, not necessarily FDA type claims, right? And so I think we're in this weird space, right, where some people feel like they have to get FDA approval to make their efficacy claims about cognition and cognitive science. I probably don't, I don't know because we haven't received venture funding, but it may be the case that folks who are receiving venture funding may not be encouraged to do the types of studies that might help show efficacy. I don't know. It may be more of a hardware focus and getting a prototype out. I'm not clear, but I do think that from my experience with the work that we've done with the, the DoD research and the military research, as we were able to establish efficacy and publish papers in that space, that became a landing point to then launch off of. And I actually think that in each of these places, the things we're talking about, education, how do we educate people about their brains? How do we, dispel some of the myths? How do we, blow apart some of that skepticism? And in each case, I really feel like it's potentially data and efficacy that we can make claims on that that might help us in that space, from my perspective.
Yeah, I think that two key factors. I think that the parallels that you can draw with brain training and physical training are huge. If you did research on why people do or don't go to the gym, and you applied all of that research, and instead of just using the word physical, you put brain in there for brain training, I think that you would see the same results. So if you look at reasons people do or don't go to the gym, you look at, do they see the benefits of that? And if people are seeing change and feeling better and physically can see change, then they will continue to do it. And this is where the measurement, the direct measurement of the brain through EEG and other tools like this allows people to say, oh my gosh, my brain is getting better and I can see the evidence of that. And that is going to get people to continue to do this. The other one is time. And if you sit back, you're only going to make time to do this if you see the benefits. So they're directly correlated. And if you're seeing benefits and the time it takes to do the training is not too much, then you will do it. And it has to be convenient. So it has to be on your phones, like Lumosity goes mobile. They have the reminders to remind you to do it, so it becomes part of your daily routines. And the games are short enough that people will engage in this. Now, if we add in, I am seeing, my bigger muscles, so my bigger brain muscle, then people will say, now I've also seen the change, and I will continue to do this because I see the benefit.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, James. That's exactly it. And I have to say also that what we're seeing holding back people is what I was mentioning before. In other words, they really don't know what they're getting into. I mean, if they see an ad for purchasing something or going to an event or getting CDs or DVDs or anything like that, there is such a plethora of and I wouldn't call it a cornucopia. I mean, it's a negative thing. There are too many different kinds of flavors of brain training. I mean, we're all, in a sense, believers here, but you're all of different religions. I don't know if to tell you shalom or salam or amen to you or whatever, some zap the brain, some pop something, it's people don't know what they're buying at all, and that's the number one thing. So I would actually suggest or hope, in a humble way, Zach, that this is something we should discuss next year. Maybe have a conference or panel or whatever specifically about how to coordinate efforts. I don't know if anybody has time for stuff like this, because everybody's doing their own thing, which on the other hand is going to hurt us all really badly in the long run. By the way, a really small question. I was making a reference to Nicole Kidman, brain training on a couch, about Australia, because she's from Australia. How many of you got that? How many of you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, I figured, yeah. You go to YouTube, Nicole Kidman, brain training on a couch. Yeah, that's what's happening down under.
So I'd like to open it up for audience questions. We've got one gentleman over here, right back there. Yep.
Hi, my name is Aldous Siplins. I do TDCS Enhanced Cognitive Training at the University of Illinois. You mentioned the importance of showing the benefits of cognitive training to the user, and the ultimate benefit is transfer. You don't want people to just get better at the one thing they're practicing. You want it to generalize. Is there a way of showing transfer to the user to foster engagement?
Yeah, I think that showing transfer is a big thing. On both on the research level in terms of in studies. Obviously, that's the criterion for publishing any paper in cognitive training, is you have to show not only that you got better at the task, but also that transferred to some underlying core cognitive ability. And we've published a number of papers along those lines. And in the future, in terms of back to the question of what's holding us back, advancing models for validation models that are more widely accepted, more integrated across systems, across different types of understanding a shared vocabulary about outcome measures, what's valid, what's not valid. I mean, right now we're in a place where if you want to run a large clinical trial, it would cost literally tens of millions of dollars to run a large clinical trial of cognitive training in a traditional clinical setting. So how do we advance that to use the technology that we have today of online testing, systems for advancing that science much more quickly. So that's what I'm spending most of my time thinking about these days. And I think using that same system to feed back to the users, a big thing that we're interested in as well. So we have an assessment battery that we give to people that you can take it when you sign up after a few days of training, take this assessment battery, and then come back 10 weeks later and take it again, and you can compare your own scores. And I think there is some compelling evidence that that does drive engagement for users, and certainly the conversation around understanding the notion of transfer that conversation with the consumer is a very important one.
Other questions? Yes.
Hi, my name is Alex Rosengarten. I study cognitive science, computer science at UCSD. How will neurotech, games, mobile technology, and big data influence clinical psychology, i.e. cognitive behavioral therapy in the near future? I know you've talked a lot about wellness, or general wellness, but how can it improve the lives of people with cognitive, affective, and otherwise mental disorders?
Yeah, well, one of the great things now is that with the technology becoming more mobile, easier to use, and easier to understand, we can take direct measurements of the specific disorder. So as opposed to relying on symptom patterns and someone's self-perception of how they feel, we're now able to take direct measurements, provide the inverse solution to look at the exact sources of the dysfunction within the brain. And by truly understanding the exact and specific nature and pathophysiology of the disorder, we can then target our treatments better to that. So as opposed to looking at like a bipolar 2 and saying, I've got 10 medications, I'm going to randomly start you on one of them, we can actually say, you know what, your brain fits the profile of someone who needs this medication and is a responder to that. So we can take that, and then we can also say, well, look, from the gaming side, let's create games that directly target that region of the brain. So we're not going to guess that it is actively engaging, you're remediating your depression. We can actually measure that during this gameplay, we are creating an improved balance between the left and right frontal lobes. And by doing that measurement and directly saying, yes, this game is causing that change in the brain, which is then remediating the underlying physiology that is dysfunctional, we are able to use this clinically to provide treatment.
And I would say that mirroring or following rather the quantified self and biohacking movement, if you will, it's very clear that things that are now being done by professionals, and rightly so, in the medical community will be performed by people themselves. They're feeling empowered by the data they're seeing on their phone, and it's not for every ailment, physical or mental. It's not for every person, definitely. I mean, some people should get professional help, period, in every sense of the word. But on the other hand, some people really don't necessarily need that. I see it. There's still a long way. Particularly in this area, it's sensitive, there are taboos, etc., and it's important that people who need professional help get it. But if we go like 10 to 15 years into the future from now, I'm pretty confident that there are people who will be using apps and web services to treat ailments, challenges in their lives, which clearly today they would go to a shrink. I have to tell you, in Europe, we sort of smile, oh, in the US, everybody has a shrink, and it's sort of a sense of something you're proud of and good for you. At least in Finland, it's really taboo. If someone has a shrink, you're really deep shit, because alcohol didn't help. So, not even sauna helped. So particularly in a country like Finland, you really pride yourself, yeah, I'm a man, I don't go to a doctor. And we're seeing that happening gradually so. So I think there is a clear niche for that, very clear business niche.
So it's absolutely critical, sort of to the future of neurogaming, that we talk about and think about integrating all these new input technologies and output technologies, and there seems to be a little bit of focus and mesmerization around mobile because it's here and now. What about cognitive neurogaming in VR, in AR, with me all the time, helping me out? Where do we see that? Is that going to happen?
It's definitely going to happen in my mind. It's going to go back, though, to something that was mentioned yesterday, and I mentioned it again today. The technology has to be, the person has to feel that it's not there. And it is only at that point that, and it's integrated fully into our lives without the people realizing that they're using the technology, that we're going to see this used all the time and everywhere, and we will have all the benefits of it. It is, as computers get faster, as processors get smaller, and this becomes available, it is going to move in that direction. But it takes technology.
I'd kind of like to disagree a little bit there. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's nice to say, yeah, these essentially like it's prosthetic, right? You're implanting something in your brain, and that's driving you into like an ideal state and nirvana or whatever. But I think really that's probably not the direction we're going. I think it's more like, the direction of exercise. So, exercise is always going to be something that you're going to realize that you're doing. There's no way around that. You're going to know that you're exercising. And the goal is to integrate that exercise into your life in a way that makes sense and that is engaging and that is, fulfilling for you.
But do I really, when I play tennis, am I really exercising to get fit? No, I'm playing it because it's fun.
No, absolutely, but you know that you're exercising, and
But I don't really care. I'm having a great time.
Well, that's a good. I mean, certainly, yeah. I mean, I've heard. I think last year it was said in this same panel. What is soccer is the gamification of running, right? So, I fully believe that, and I agree with you 100%.
Well, no, I was just going to say that I actually think there's sort of room for both. So, we've already started to integrate, the VR with the neurofeedback in real time, and we've started to build games in that space, and it actually really changes the aspect of the gameplay. It sort of makes you think about it a little bit differently, and I think we've had some conversations over the past day or so about the medium and matching to the medium and developing to that medium. The other thing is just sort of in terms of the AR and the ubiquitousness of it, we've been early developers for Google Glass, and we've actually integrated some of the EEG technologies into Glass in real time so that you can see something of a metric of brain state in real time. And I do think that's separate maybe from neurogaming, but it is also, the ability to sort of have that information about your state and how you're doing in real time. That's not just a discrete experience that gaming or some other cognitive training technology might be. And so I kind of think there's room for both. There's a lot of elbow room in this space for ubiquitous sensing and wearable sensing and combining with some of the quantified self technologies as well as sort of directed interventions, specific things that I'm doing for exercise. Sometimes I might just want to know how I'm doing. Sometimes I just want to know how many steps I have.
Reidar, you get the last.
Okay, since I'm on a weekly basis meeting with pretty smart and at the same time quite skeptical business executives who are making hard decisions on whether to purchase a training for a few €1,000 or not for their employees, we've really been forced to think very carefully about what I was talking about earlier. In other words, terminology. And even here in our discussions and here at the booths, there's a huge difference between the general exercising or practicing something. If you're practicing something, I won't go into the Finnish equivalents or anything, but if you're practicing something, that's what we are talking about, for instance, then you become more skillful. So then if you use another metaphor, and as a personal brainer I sometimes do that, I talk about creating stamina or developing stamina, for instance. So you would then be more in an exercising mode, equivalent or comparable to muscle or using oxygen more efficiently in your body. These are very different things on the physical side, and they should be and need to be on the mental training side. So already we have a plethora of words here to play around with, and I'm not here to lecture you on solutions. I'm just saying that this is important because already here we're hearing slightly different opinions just because we're using different words, and that in the long run is dangerous.
Well, that was a terrific panel. I feel smarter already. Thank you so much.